You know what I've been thinking about? Um, is the idea of truth. I think everyone once in a while, after being told lies, after being lied to, they kind of start questioning whether there is such a thing as truth. Kind of like how people question about true love, you know what I mean, or soulmate kind of thing, right? So, and in my journey of reading nonsense on the internet, I stumbled upon this story, the folklore about the old woman in a cave. It's called the old woman in a cave. So this story follows a man who is in search of truth. So this is a married man who one time out of the middle of nowhere told his wife he's gonna venture out into the mountains to look for the truth. After nights, moons, and suns, this guy got tired of looking for the truth. And so he kind of stumbled upon this cave where he rested. In that cave, he met a lady, an old lady, an old ugly lady, scary old looking ugly lady. And this lady presented herself as truth, like her name is truth. And so this man spent a couple of winters with the lady, basically resting. And then when he was done, he went on his journey to search for the truth. But before he left, this old lady told him, "Son, when people ask about me, tell them that I'm young and beautiful." And in that moment, I sort of like reading that story. I was like, "Yo, this is a bit interesting." The truth telling the man to lie about her. So in this case, the truth is telling you to lie. And this has been Touchin Grass. And today we're going to be talking about the truth. So there is so many dimensions of this idea that I don't have the brain cells to basically go through all of them. But think about when you're growing up, a young kid growing up, you look at the people that surround you as like superheroes, and they present themselves as superheroes. Mhm. And you, if like every kid thinks of their parent as like, yo, richest guy in the room. Right? Look at the parent, richest guy in the room, super strength, and all that. So in that essence, you kind of grow up thinking that way. Um, that the truth is held by certain people, and or there's a sort of like source or definition of where the truth emanates from. And in that source, you consume that version of it. See, there's a good example is like, let me give you this. So to understand more of the dimensions of truth, so there's some concept called a coherence theory. And the coherence theory defines truth as the coherence of a truth bearer with a large system of other truth bearers, often focusing on beliefs. So this just means the truth begins when there is already an existing definition of like the walls or guidelines of how things are supposed to work. And then from that existing definition, other people are sort of brought in to consume and live by that definition. That is like the coherence theory that's used to define truth. But there is another theory that's called the correspondence theory. This sort of positions truth as the truth lies with the truth bearer, like a belief or a sentence, a reality or a fact, a thing that you eat and sleep on. Some formulations of these theories state like state affairs instead of facts, where the truth bearer is true if it corresponds to a state of affairs that it obtains. But this is more of a philosophical version of it. But if you go back and forth, because if you go ask ChatGPT right now, like how how it defines truth, its definition of truth is sort of like conflicting, because it's a large learning language model. So it's sort of fed a lot of definition and facts of things, and then it leaves with those definitions, and those definitions are sort of constrained under certain parameters that help it function and be useful in certain scenarios. And that makes it a bit more biased, because a combination of multiple biases that now creates its own version of truth in a way. And it now kind of defines questions. Okay, if my definition of things and how I see the world is simply a result of influences of the environment that I live in, then at what point do I begin and what point do I end as a single entity or an individual? As like, what is my definition of the truth, if that ever exists? You know? So it's insane to think about it that way now, because it kind of lets you know for a fact you might not be a complete person after all, like in terms of how they see the world, and your view of the world is limited by how much of the world you have seen. You know, it's like, again, for some reason I keep on quoting Mr. Robot, but he says this, right? Mr. Robot says, it's one thing to question your mind, but it's another to question both your eyes and ears. And if you let that sink in, right, that just means, because the mind is entirely reliant of the stimuli it gets from these sensory organs. If you've done biology, you understand. So it's simply a system that it's fed input data from the eyes and ears, right? And so the mind does not have its own independent understanding of the world. It has no spatial awareness and so forth. It's an isolative system, but rather it starts to understand the world by being fed this data. But now, if the things that feed this data, like the eyes and ears, are also biased, if these things themselves are also biased, now makes you question rather, wait a minute, right? Like, wait a minute. If the things that feed in the data are also biased, so that means also the mind is going to be biased, right? Yeah. And now to think about it, right? That's what I'm saying. It's like the world that you live in, the environment that you live in, sort of defines how you navigate the world in its own. And this, it's like, I wouldn't say it's amazing, but this is it's a nuance of an idea to have, that your mind is dependent on what you feed it. And that is something else. So we can look at truth as a process, right? So like truth as a process. So and the truth is not static. So because you grow up believing one thing, like you grow up seeing the world one way, but as you get older, as you're fed more and more information, you sort of start seeing the world a bit differently. And this is exactly the story that I kind of talked before, the old woman in a cave story. This man sort of began the whole journey of his understanding that there is probably a solid definition of what the truth is, and he went searching for it. But when he got there, to the point when he had even stopped looking, he had now to adapt and sort of define that, wait a minute, the truth has got older, right? The truth has aged on its own. This old woman has aged. The truth didn't stay young and beautiful, right? And even worse now, the truth itself stands on point to say that this guy should lie about the truth. The truth itself accepts that there is underlying beauty in lying and telling a different definition. But the story itself, the philosophical story itself does not say this is a lie, but this sort of my understanding that I had from that experience. And it's wild. It's wild. And because yikes. Because like think about it this way. When you are trying to make any decision in life, um no one makes a decision without having a proper understanding of the things that are at stake, right? And after having this understanding and sort of parameters as to what these things are, that's when you come to the stance of having a bit more confidence in what decision you're about to make. And in that explanation, you also have the inner voice that helps you make that decision. But your inner voice itself could also be biased, and it could either be supporting the thing that you deeply just wanted, or it could also be supporting whatever truth or version of truth you're being fed up for the long run, like while living your life, or whoever's sharing the propaganda. And you could say truth is all about personal experiences. It's all definition on personal experiences, and others would say it's otherwise. Rather, truth is a fact, and everything else that's outside that, it's not to be concerned with. But from because like some people even suggest that truth is discovered through like after having personal experiences and then the interpretation of these experiences, and then you sort of evoke different meanings. You sort of come up with these different ideas of what could this possibly mean and how you want to go about it and where you want to grow from there. Ah, yeah, it's a lot. But I guess even if the philosophers never came to the conclusion of what truth is, well, who am I or who are we essentially? So I challenge this to you listeners, basically to try to do some self-investigating, or whether where you where you are currently in life, is it a definition you have set yourself for, or is it an interpretation of your personal experiences that have led you to make that decision, or led you to where you are? And that's all for today. And have a great time. And this has been Touchin Grass. See you next time.